They don't have a mic?
Okay, I'd like to start the meeting tonight. A call to order the Town of Coventry Planning Commission special meeting Wednesday, August 9th, 2023. And the time is 6:42. Do a roll call for quorum. Mr. Kenny?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Reyes?
Here.
Mr. Burke?
Here.
Mr. Price?
Here.
Mrs. Elderkin?
Here.
Secretary Anderson is excused tonight. Vice Chair Colonian. Chairman Flynn is here. We have a quorum of 8. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance. Flag.
Of the United States of America. And to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Close your eyes and imagine.
Okay, under old business and discussion, public informational meeting continued from July 10th, 2023. It is a comprehensive permit master plan, Coventry Crossings, mixed use development owner, John Cazella, William Eccleston, trust, ETAL Elaine Eccleston, revocable trust, applicant Craig New Homes LLC, Craig Management, CO Jonathan Kent, proposed mixed-use development consisting of 68 single-family units and 78 two-family units, which will be 25% are deemed affordable. Additional 12,500 square foot commercial use, AP 10 lot 29, AP 18 lot 86, zone general business, SPD and R20, and it's on Hockney Hill Road. And before we start, our director would like to just tell the audience a few important things. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Great. My name is Doug McLean. I'm the town planner. Just as a few announcements. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can you hear me if I speak like this? Great. My name is Doug McLean. I'm the town planner. Just a few announcements and some housekeeping items. Many of the applicants' materials have been revised since the last meeting. We've made efforts to make those materials available for everyone to review. If you would like to review them online, they're now on the town website. You can review them either tonight, if you have a mobile device, or when you get home on your computer, take a closer look. Obviously, you'll see the site plan is going to be presented and the applicant will go over the changes. So there's large scale plans in the back of the room, as well as a revised traffic study, a revised project narrative. And we have also recently received a peer review of traffic. Those materials, we gave 5 copies in the back. They were really meant to be shared. If you have one of those documents, feel free to share with your neighbors. If you're interested in reviewing one of those hard copy documents, you might see them by one of your neighbors in the room. Again, all those materials are on the town website. You'll find them by going to the meeting calendar for the town, find tonight's meeting. You'll see a link when you go to the agenda called Agenda Packet. That's how you receive all the materials for all the meetings moving forward for this matter. We're going to use that same link. Go to the agenda for whatever meeting you're attending for this. Go to the Agenda Packet. That will give you any revised materials moving forward. So when you come to the next meeting in advance, you can see any new materials that are online. You can get caught up on what the latest plan is before you attend. The other announcement I'll have is that my website or my email address is available on the town planning department. If you have comments on this plan at any time, you can email those comments to me. If you email them to me a week in advance of any of these meetings, I'll ensure those comments are provided to the commission in advance of their meeting. So at any given time through this proceeding after tonight, if you want to email me comments, you can do that. That concludes my announcements for tonight.
Thank you. Also, emergency exits, you'll see them posted on the side of the building. You also can go out the rear and go to the left where you came in. And I just want to let you know, men's and women's bathrooms are open. If you go out the back door to the right, you'll see that where they're posted. Thank you. Is anybody here for the applicant? I think we left off on the traffic study, but if you want to do a quick review of where we were and where we are today. Okay,
Is this working? I'm not
test.
Test mic 1, 2.
Test.
Test, yep, okay, we're good, thank you. For the record, William Landry representing the applicant. I did a lot of talking at the first session. I'll bet there's a lot of people here that'd be happy if somebody else picked up where I left off, and that's what we have planned for tonight. The planner has broadly described the changes in the site plan. We've got a much less intense project as a result of comments made last time. The larger multifamily buildings have been eliminated, more in favor of single family and two-family dwellings all on one lot. And the athletic center that had been proposed for the intersection area of the property has been eliminated. The traffic report worked with the athletic center. It works even better without the athletic center, as you'll hear shortly. We've also got a less impactful, more residential scale. We've got a less impactful, more residential scale development than previously. I can't hear you. Can't get any closer than this. Is it working?
Nothing.
Okay. Yep.
Test, test. Test.
Test.
Much
Thank
better.
you. For people who didn't hear that, but we've got a much less impactful project with the single family and two-family dwellings. We're also down from 153 units as originally proposed to 146 units. We're also preserving the setbacks that were the result of extensive negotiations. We've got a minimum of 40 feet landscaped buffer, vegetated buffer, and a total of 60 feet of setbacks from the adjoining development. Probably more important is that the character of the development without the very large buildings is more compatible with adjoining single-family residential development, and similar to what you'd see in other residential subdivisions. The number of single-family units are 68, and the number of multifamily or two-family units are 78. And unless there are any questions of me, I'd like to introduce Paul Bannon of Beta Group, our traffic engineer. When we were here last, I paraphrased Mr. Bannon's report. I described generally his methodology. That report's a little outdated because it was based on the athletic facility and the traffic loads associated with that. So he submitted a modified report, and he'll present to you the substance of his methodology, how he got to his conclusions, and he'll express those conclusions to you. And he'll also talk a little bit about the peer review report that was prepared by PAR. He won't speak for PAR. There's somebody here that's prepared to do that. But it will reflect our substantially favorable reaction to the PAR review. What happened on traffic here was what happens when you have two very experienced, very qualified traffic engineers tackling the same issue. They came out substantially in the same place, and gives us, and I hope the board, the confidence, the greatest confidence that the traffic situation is well underway and well managed by the proposal, particularly with the new plan that's been proposed. So unless there are any questions of me, I'd ask Mr. Bannon to come up, introduce himself, describe his qualifications, and provide to you the executive summary of his report.
I just have a quick clarification. It's written 78 units, two-family dwellings. I just want to make people understand that it's 39 buildings that house 78 units.
That's
It's
exactly
confusing
right.
when you read it.
It is. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Bannon. Name and address for the record, please.
Name is Paul Bannon. I'm a senior associate with Beta Group in Blackstone and Lincoln, Rhode Island.
You're good.
Okay. Get used to this podium the wrong way. For the record, we were retained by the owner to conduct a traffic impact analysis for this development project. As part of that effort, we reviewed the project site plans, worked with the site engineer on the proposed site access and circulation. We completed a traffic counting program on the main roadways leading to the site, including Hartney Hill Road, Newsnack Hill Road. We conducted peak hour turning movement counts at the main intersection, signalized intersection with Newsnack and with Hill Road with Hartney Hill Road. We requested accident information from the police department to determine if there was any concern relative to the frequency and severity of crashes in the area. We reviewed the physical characteristics of the roadway to ensure that safe stopping site distances are available at the proposed access locations to the property. We estimated future volumes for the current plan before you that includes the 146 units of residential and I believe 12,500 square feet of retail. Then as part of the future conditions, we assessed the operations of the future conditions with the estimated trips generated by this project. And we made recommendations where appropriate to provide safe and adequate access. Generally, the project area can be described as primary commercial along Route 3 corridor. There's residential properties and neighborhoods off of intersecting side streets, but primarily in this area, it's commercial along the main. Newsnack and Hartney Hill will provide the primary access points. The northerly access point will be off Newsnack, where there's a 5-lane section of roadway, and then the secondary access off of Hartney Hill Road in this area, primarily for the residential component. So we've distributed the traffic for future traffic that will be entering and exiting the site, so it's not concentrated in one location. New Snack Hill Road in this area, it's a 5-lane section, has, two travel lanes, north-southbound and southbound, with a center median turn lane. That provides safe access or safer access for turning vehicles into numerous commercial businesses along the route, and also will help facilitate access to this property. It's posted at 45 miles an hour in this area. There's no curbing or sidewalks along the roadway in this area. Harkney Hill, it's an urban minor arterial, 32 feet wide. Also has no curbing and sidewalks. It's posted at 30 miles per hour. Hill Farm, that's an urban major collector that runs generally north-south, 34 feet wide in the project area with 12-foot travel lanes and a 5-foot shoulder. That's also posted at 30 miles an hour. The main study intersection is the traffic signal here at Harkney Hill Road and New Snack Hill Road. It was recently upgraded by the Department of Transportation to include new traffic signal heads, some improved phasing, and the heads for visibility and phasing and timing for optimization. The other intersection we looked at Harkney Hill and Hill, that's a 3-way stop sign controlled minor approach from Hill Road. They recently added a right turn lane to help improve the efficiency of that intersection and for easier access from Hill Road as vehicles know where people are going, whether they're turning or going straight. Traffic volumes. The traffic count information, as I said, we conducted 24-hour, 7-day counts on both New Snack Hill Road and Harkney Hill Road. This section of New Snack accommodates roughly 13,000 vehicles per day. Peak hours, 7 to 8 in the morning and 4:30 to 5:30 in the afternoon. During those periods, morning, roughly 960 vehicles per hour in cross our frontage area. And then the PM, roughly 1,200 vehicles in that hour. Harkney Hill Road, roughly 9,000 vehicles per day. During those same time periods, there were 790 vehicles in the morning and 970 in the afternoon. So directionally, morning traffic destined to Route 3 and the highway, and then it's just reverse in the afternoon. Safety, we reviewed the stopping site distances at the driveways, looking at the horizontal and vertical geometry of the roadways. These roadways along the property frontage are relatively straight and flat and provide sufficient site distances for the posted speeds and actual travel speeds along the road. So there are no issues relative to safe access in and out of the development from the driveways we have proposed. Looking at future conditions, what we did is use the IT trip generation manual, which is industry standard, to estimate what would be generated. What we look at is the peak hour of traffic from a development. That peak hour traffic is a combination of when the site would generate its highest hourly volume along with the adjacent street traffic. So you understand that there may be 300 cars on the property. They all, yes, potentially over 300 cars on the property based.
Test.
Can you hear me now?
Test. Test, test. Test.
Test, test. Okay, for the future condition, as I indicated, we use the IT trip generation manual, and we look at what the peak period of traffic would be for that particular land use. Because when we do our capacity analysis, we look at the worst case condition over the course of a day. For this land use, it would be the AM peak associated with the commuter peak and the PM peak. So during those periods, we would estimate the morning peak, we would generate 122 vehicle trips. That's total entering and exiting. PM 204, and Saturday midday 205. I know residents are going to say that seems low for the number of units. As I indicated, there may be 300 cars on the property for the number of units or more. They don't all leave at the same time. Someone can leave at 6 in the morning to go to work, or they could be coming home from an overnight shift. Teacher leaving at 7 in the morning to get to school, or a retail person leaving at 10 o'clock in the morning. So they all don't leave at the same time. And what the trip generation manual does, it gives us what that peak hour for that use would be. And during, again, which would coincide with the roadway traffic peak. So that's what we look at, worst case scenario for the development over the course of the day, site and adjacent street traffic. We use the highway capacity manual methods in assessing values, A through F, A being the best, F being the worst, when we look at operational conditions, signalized, unsignalized. Using that industry standard, existing conditions, we found that the main study intersection today operates at level service B in the morning, C in the afternoon, and B on Saturday. There are several movements that experience greater delays at level service D, which is acceptable. But most of the residents understand, I get stuck in a queue of 15 vehicles on an approach. That's that level of service, but the other movements are operating freely with no restrictions, and that's overall operating at a good level of service. We then estimated or expanded that base traffic that's there today using expansion factors for seasonal adjustments and also general growth rate background based on town growth and also known developments in the area. So we added all that traffic on to the base to establish a future condition. Looking at that future condition, again, the intersections, minor increase in delays during those periods with the numbers I had indicated for trips, B in the morning, C in the afternoon, and B on a weekend. So overall, the intersection operates efficiently today, and with the numbers that we're projecting and the distribution of traffic we're proposing with the multiple driveways, that there'll be relatively negligible impacts to the intersection. And we feel that safe and adequate access with the design as proposed can be provided to the property. I'm available for any questions.
Anybody have any questions for the traffic engineer?
I do.
Go ahead, Kenny.
Mr. Bannon, a couple of questions. You folks looked at the turning lane from onto Hill Farm, and you don't see any issues with that for the driveway being there as far as any, with the traffic and whatnot?
Operating? Okay. Ricky, we've aligned the intersection with Maple Route to create a four-way intersection. So we're beyond that immediate turn lane. So, we've provided, we feel sufficient separation between intersections.
Okay, that leads to my next question. You guys used Maple Route in your calculations for vehicles? And as far as like accesses and whatnot?
Yes, Maple Route is cut through between. roads.
Maple Route is a dead end. It doesn't cut through to anywhere. It doesn't go to Route 3. So if you use that in your calculations, you need to redo them.
No, we didn't. We didn't
You
assign
just-
any, we
you
didn't
just told
assign,
me You did.
no, we didn't assign it. We aligned it with Maple Route and included it, but we didn't assign any traffic to Maple Route.
Okay, when I'm looking at your, Cody, can you move this up a little bit so we can see the bottom? I'm looking at your dotted line for traffic, and you have traffic going down Maple Route as an access.
That has nothing to do with traffic, the dotted line.
Okay. Is it Ken? What's the developer's name? Could you explain to me then why that line is on there like that?
That looks like a boundary line
No?
zoning, because it goes all the way here and here.
Could somebody come up and explain that line? Just name and address for the record, please.
Or is that a utility?
Yeah, Sam Hemingway with Garofalo and Associates. Sam Hemingway, project engineer with Garofalo and Associates. The line that you indicated is in fact a zoning district boundary line.
Thank you. The other thing I looked at, have you guys considered putting a turning lane going into the development as you're coming up Harkney Hill, heading towards Hill Farm?
That will be an option. This project, being on state routes, has to go to the Department of Transportation. So as we finalize the project, that'll be one of the things they'll look at.
I think that would be a very good thing if this project moves forward to lessen the impact of people getting stuck on Harkney Hill and then backing up on Route 3. It would keep the flow of traffic going.
I
if there
agree,
is a turn.
and that's probably why the department added that right turn lane onto Hill Road.
Okay, that was all my questions, and thank you. That's all.
Anybody else have any questions on the board for the traffic engineer? All right, hearing none. Does our traffic engineer have anything to add that he? Not public comment yet. Thank you. We'll get to you.
You're off. Now you're off.
Does our traffic engineer have anything to add that he may or may not agree with that? No.
You keep turning yourself off.
Okay, is that your presentation, Mr. Banner?
Yes, it is.
Mr. Landry, would you like to come up?
I'd like you to just describe your, well, you did have that as part of your report, correct? Is that your professional experience?
No, I didn't get into it.
Yeah.
No, I didn't get into that initially.
Just, we'll provide a copy of your resume for the board, but if you could just briefly go over your professional experience and background to support the opinions you provided in your report.
Yes, again, Paul Bannon, I'm a associate with Beta Group. I've been graduate of University of Rhode Island, 1984, 92. Have been working in the state of Rhode Island for the last 40 years on Department of Transportation, community development projects, and my focus has been on roadway improvement projects, working for the State Traffic Commission for over 6 years, conducting studies, both safety and operational, for projects that towns have asked the State Traffic Commission to look at. I've done hundreds of traffic studies over the years. I specialize in traffic signal systems design for major routes and development projects.
Okay, thank you. And one more thing, the PAR review, peer review, the PAR engineering peer review you've reviewed, correct?
Yes, I have.
And could you provide your general reaction to that peer review, a very brief summary of the substance of the review, what PAR agreed with? I also understand that there were some recommendations for additional data to be provided as a supplemental report. The board may be familiar with the PAR engineering peer review report, but I think there are a lot of people here from the general public that have not had a chance to look at it.
Could you speak right into the microphone, please?
Yes. They were retained by the town to review the traffic study to ensure that it was done in accordance with industry guidelines, defining the scope of the project.
Test. Reboot. Test. Nothing, right? Test. Nothing. Test. Test. Test.
Yes.
Test. Test.
Test, test.
Test. Test. Test.
Test mic 1, 2.
Test. Hey, we got the air conditioner working.
Hey, that was my line.
Oh, okay. Just continuing from where I was, PAR was attained to ensure that the study that was completed was done in accordance with industry standard guidelines, reviewing what we looked at, the project area, seeing it was consistent with the size of the development, make sure we looked at the proper things. The data we collected was appropriate. The analysis procedures that were done in accordance with industry standards. The assumptions that we made in the reports were correct. The calculations we did were correct. So generally, they agreed with the methodology and the results of our study. There were several comments where they requested backup data that we'll have to include to back up our assumptions in the report. Minor revisions that will be included in the final document.
Thank you. Derek, could you come up and just review your traffic report for the board and for the audience, please? Thank you. Name and address for the record.
My name is Derek Hug. I'm a Derek, D-E-R-E-K, Hug, H-U-G. I'm a managing traffic engineer at PAR Corporation. We completed a traffic study peer review last week for this development. Largely, we agree with the findings. The scope was complete. We did have some minor comments, some typos, that kind of thing. Our most significant comment had to do with the retail pad or the commercial pad on site. It is unclear to us if there is a known or suspected tenant of that space. Assuming there isn't, typically when I do these traffic studies, that is not known at this point. The methodology used by the traffic engineer was proper. However, there's many different uses that can go into a site like that. Some of those are very light on traffic and some of those are very traffic intensive. So what was used in the study is in accordance with the ITE manual, but we did request that once a tenant is known, if it's, a drugstore, a coffee shop, something that is very traffic intensive, that the trip generation and the analyses after the development may need to be revisited. Other than that, our biggest comment was at this time, there doesn't appear to be much detail about pedestrian circulation on site or how they at least get to the public right of way or public right of ways on both main roads. And I understand that neither of these roads, Harkney Hill nor Nooseneck Hill, are particularly pedestrian friendly. But that doesn't mean that will always be the case. And so we would like to see, pedestrian routes provided to at least get you out to that right of way in case further public works projects are done to improve the pedestrian friendliness of these corridors. At least this is ready to plug into that. Those are our two largest comments.
Okay, I also noticed in your report that you revised the number of injury crashes from their report from 5 to 6. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is there anybody else on the board have any questions for our traffic engineer?
I have one.
Go ahead.
I did notice on your report that it said the applicant should verify all turning radius to accommodate emergency vehicles and large trucks on site. Not so much, I guess, for you, but for them. Did you guys actually do that? And do you have enough turning radius for that? That would be a question I have.
I'm unaware if they've done it or not.
Okay, all right.
Anybody else? Okay, I think we're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
I noticed on the plans too, on the cul-de-sacs, they have islands. We have actually been eliminating islands in cul-de-sacs. So that will help the radius turn of any emergency vehicles. So we would rather not have the islands in the cul-de-sacs. Mr. Landry, you'd like to come back up?
You gotta turn it on.
Thanks. The additional information that we don't know who the tenant's going to be, we will provide that information as this process goes forward. The pedestrian safety recommendations we took very seriously. We have enough time to be able to make some revisions to the plan so that you can see them at the next meeting. We do intend to connect and provide defined pedestrian paths to get across the public right of ways. With respect to turning radii, we can also, provide that information. The preliminary plan is usually the engineering stage. I'm sure our IDOT will have the same issues, but we have no qualms whatsoever about having a turning radius study done before we finalize the engineering, once we get through this conceptual plan. That's a big deal, the pedestrian safety. And as Mr. Bannon mentioned, the idea of a turning lane, we can all think it's a great idea, but because we're dealing with public highways, it really has to be DOT that's convinced of that. We can't show it on a plan, but that will be part of the physical alteration permit process that takes place. They'll do their own study, and they'll get copies of the peer review and Mr. Bannon's study. But if that improvement is incorporated, we'd be supporting that as well. I think that's, given that this was to be mostly traffic, that was the bulk of what we wanted to present tonight. We do want to hear from the public. I suspect that there'll be a lot more said about traffic. I just want to point out that everybody has opinions on traffic, including the speaker here. I've sat in front of properties and wondered about traffic calculations and whether they really proved out or not. And we can all become experts in our own minds on what traffic patterns are and what these calculations generate. But in these cases, the Rhode Island courts, not just before zoning boards and planning boards, but even regular testimony about other issues, they've developed a standard that traffic is an issue for experts. Real traffic analysis of impacts. How many more cars will there be? How much more delay will be caused? These are not subjective judgments. They're empirical judgments that are based on trip generation manuals that all traffic agencies across the country use, and all traffic engineers, based on thousands and thousands of other similar types of projects to this. And here we're dealing with single family and two family. It's a lot easier than soccer facility. And so it's a lot more predictable. And the results of these traffic analyses that both of these firms provided are much more reliable. But it's all about expert analysis. It's really not about somebody thinking that everyone's going to have 4 cars and they're all going to be coming out at the same time. Nobody wants to see change like this that invites more traffic. But the consensus of the experts is that this roadway system has a very high capacity to handle traffic. And the town has recognized that by designating this property in its comprehensive plan as a property that could be suitable for upgrading of zoning, that would be suitable for upgrading of zoning from commercial to residential, especially less intense residential like this. And, it calls out some very high densities that we don't even nearly approach for this project. And one of the reasons why it's identified as a gateway project is because of the roadway system and its location. And importantly, the access to public infrastructure, sewer and water infrastructure is a big deal. There aren't many sites like this left in any municipality, Coventry included, that could really make a difference in fulfilling the objectives of the comp plan and getting the town closer to the 10% goal for low and moderate income housing. Thank you. We haven't concluded the presentation. We've suspended it subject to hearing from the public.
Okay, thank you. Anybody on the board have any questions before I open up public hearing? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to open up public hearing. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, public hearing is now open. I do believe some of the residents have an attorney representing them. Is that the case? If you could come up, Mr. Evans. That's fine with me. I just, out of respect, I just wanted to address you. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to start on the my left side, then we'll go to the center, then we'll go to the right side. Everybody will have an opportunity to speak. Please limit what you're saying so we can get through a lot of the testimony tonight. So if there's anybody on this side that would like to come up, I'll call you first because you stood up before. Come on up. Come on up to the. And Mr. Landry, if you could just write down the questions and then you'll address them after. Name and address, please.
Dale Giant Santee, 11 Stewart Drive in Coventry. Giansanti. Thanks. My question is regarding the exit. Thank you. My question was regarding exiting at Maple Root and at Hill Farm. Were you proposing a traffic light at either of those locations?
I think the testimony that the state will provide when they review,
That'd be part of their plan?
if in fact this passes, they'll look at the final plan. So the state roads actually go right around this property.
Mhm. And just one other question, please. It looks like the Wisteria area and part of Wood Estates has some tree buffering. I see it looks like all of the living trees will be cut down along Hill Farm. Is that correct?
I believe they're leaving a significant buffer. Mr. Landry, would you just like to come up and just answer the buffer? Just so we're clear on that. Name and address.
Yeah, Sam Hemingway with Garofalo and Associates. No, there was no intent to maintain a vegetated buffer, specifically maintain existing trees along the roadway. So the observation was correct. The existing vegetated buffer that's identified on the plans is where the property abuts residential properties, not along the road corridor. So although many of the trees will be saved and supplemented with plantings, there's no intent to maintain a vegetated buffer.
Thank you.
And if I could speak, hopefully for most people that drive down that road every day, that is one of our major concerns that I will speak myself, to see all of that built there and to lose all that vegetation will really be heartbreaking. The loss of the wildlife, what we see all the time. The changes that have been made are nice for Wood Estates, but for the rest of us that go down that road every day, some kind of concession would be great if that was possible.
Thank you. Come on up, Senator. Name and address, please.
Leonidas Reptakis, Leonidas Reptakis, 2080 New Snake Hill Road. Good evening, everybody. Everyone, sorry for the lateness, but we've been discussing this issue for the past year. And my concerns is traffic again, as usual. The problem here in this map is that for the last probably 10 years, we've been addressing the issue of traffic exiting on Hill Farm Road onto Hockney Hill Road. We spent many meetings with the State Highway Traffic Commissioner. to make sure that the intersection of Hill Farm Road and Harkney Hill Road is as safe as possible. We've had vehicles exiting Hill Farm Road right into the cemetery. You've seen the damage to the fencing. Now we're going to have vehicles exiting onto Harkney Hill Road, probably either going straight ahead to Maple Root Road, possibility. But my main concern is that we've spent so many hours in meetings trying to make that intersection as safe as possible with vehicles coming off Route 3 and coming down Harkney Hill Road and not colliding at the intersection of Hill Farm and Harkney Hill Road. Now we're going to have more traffic using that dedicated lane to enter the project off Route 3 and exiting the project onto Harkney Hill Road. It was dangerous enough exiting Hill Farm Road and making the left turn onto Harkney Hill Road. And this right turn lane has sort of helped. Now we're going to add more traffic onto Harkney Hill Road, making that left to go back up to Route 3. I would be opposed to this, and I would recommend, I'm not a traffic engineer, but if we have already a so-called intersection of Route 3 and Harkney Hill Road, to rebuild that intersection, so that would be one entrance, avoiding Harkney Hill Road. And the second one would be the one, I believe it's further to the north. Again, it would be up to the state DOT to decide to have traffic signals to exit or enter the project. So that is one of the major concerns. I would be totally opposed, since living through this entire issue, and I've got emails going back 10, 15 years ago discussing improving, and you've seen the improvements. We've added stop signs, flashing stop signs. We've added that dedicated turn signal. Now we're going to have traffic exiting onto 2 lanes of traffic heading westbound on Route 118, known as Harkney Hill Road. So that's a major concern, ladies and gentlemen, to the Planning Commission, that I would absolutely be opposed to that. And hopefully the Planning Commission would even look at it more in detail to make that decision, whether you have the discussion with the DOT. The other issue is many, many years ago, 1993, 1994, there was a proposed Almax Kmart proposal on this acreage. And I remember back reading October, I believe it was October 1994, Kent County Times article, that my question is, has DEM been involved in this discussion? Back then, I think there was a need of a aquatic freshwater wetlands permit. So that's the second issue on this whole large parcel. Traffic, number one, I think is a major issue, and I'm opposed again to having any egress out onto either Hill Farm if it's reconfigured, or even Harkney Hill Road if they're spending so many years of trying to make this intersection a more safer intersection for the residents of Western Coventry, and even those egressing out of Wood Estates. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up. Name and address, please.
Tammy Christensen Messier, 13 Wisteria Drive. Just in listening, I don't know when this traffic testing or whatever was done, but if it was done recently, it wasn't done during school. Now, these kids are zippity doing all over the place in their cars and, you know, to this high school. So are their parents to get them over to school and everything. It's very busy time at that time. So I don't think the school time has been put into this planning data. Also, the going into down into near Stop and Shop, the traffic is, you know, pattern down there. I don't know if the consideration on that part of this traffic is going to be considered because it gets very congested down in through that area over there. And how that's going to impact the town of how we're going to get around. The other thing is 95. Now to get on and off 95 is getting very treacherous because of the volume that loads on to 95, especially in the morning and coming off those ramps at night. So the off ramp coming in is impossible if you're coming from southbound to get off that exit ramp at 6 because of that traffic on Route 3 on that section right there, just the highway traffic alone. So if you're taking into consideration the traffic patterns and the increase in traffic, I think that stuff should be taken into consideration because, you know, Coventry's section of 95 is pretty busy, but it gets a little treacherous at certain times of the day too. So I would just like to, you know, say those few things. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Come on up, sir. Name and address, please.
David Mercer, 5187 Flat River, Western Coventry. Just a few things, in reference to the vegetation, if this goes through along Nooseneck, going down Hockney Hill, is there going to be vegetation blocking off so they're not looking at this massive house area? Number two, the gentleman mentioned before about water. Is this public water or does this have to be a well setup,
The city water.
city water?
We do not have a landscape design on this plan yet, but our comp plan does look at this section and aesthetic value is highly recommended. So, but they don't have a landscape design on this, and this is just a conceptual master plan,
So there's no design in reference to like a lot
not
of
at this time.
a lot of developments I've seen in the past, they have like a water runoff area, they throw a chain link fence around it. And then in 2 or 3 years, weeds are growing, nobody takes care of it. So that's an eyesore if it does happen like that. And the lady before me, like she says, going down Route 3, Nooseneck Hill. You come down to South Main Street, and at that light, there's traffic. You go down to going in towards Stop and Shop at past there, even before, right after Stop and Shop at that light, there's traffic backed up. You get down to Sandy Bottom Road, a lot of traffic. So getting a lot more cars on, Nooseneck Hill Road is just going to make a big backup for everybody.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else on this side like to come up? Come on up, sir. Name and address, please.
James Bath, 16 Apple Blossom Road. I'm just BATH, like take a bath. I'm thinking in the morning, like I think a gentleman said that like everyone doesn't have 4 cars and everyone's not going to leave at the same time. But at 8 o'clock in the morning, the people who work in this place are going to be going to work. And there's going to be a mass exit from this place in the morning when they all go. And no matter how you set the traffic up, all of that is going to hit at the exact same time in the early morning, 7 to 9, going to work. As this goes up the street and everyone's going to take a left to get on 95 going to Providence, all of that is going to be there also. So all I can see is major congestion happening every morning, no matter how you put this together, like if your roads or anything else, all that is going to hit the same time to go through a big bubble of people. It's not there now going through, getting on the highway and then coming back the same way at night, getting off the highway, coming back to this area and trying to get back into that where they are. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else on this side? Come on up, ma'am. Name and address.
Diane Bryans, Bryans, 28 Maple Root Road. You're welcome. We all, everyone talks about the traffic and the buildup of traffic. Well, a very simple buildup is, think about Dunkin' Donuts on a Saturday morning when when the traffic is coming, the cars are coming down and also going down Route 3. And that's just for people getting donuts. Now, can imagine people that now got to go to work and go to school and do whatever else they do. So that's just a very small, simple example of a small amount of people and how much traffic can build up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else on this side? Anybody in the center? Come on up, right in the front row.
Quinlan, 22 Wood Cove Drive.
Can you speak right into the microphone, please? You could pull that up towards you.
The two-family, I'm no longer going to have the apartment buildings, but the two-family, are they going to be duplexes? If so, how many allowed in a duplex? Secondly, I have a concern about the property values in Wood Estates. I abut the property and on Wood Cove. What is the price that you're looking to sell these units, the single family and the two-family? Are they going to be in line with what property values are within Wood Estates? The 40-foot buffer, what is that going to be? Is it going to be trees? Is it going to be a fence? What type of vegetation is there going to be? In lot AP 18, lot 86, what is that little triangular piece of land? Is it going to be vegetation? Is there going to be trees? Or is it just going to be left as a field? And lastly, the plan for the septic system. If you don't come to an agreement with John, what are you doing about a septic system for this development? Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? You want to come up, sir? You in next, second row? You can be, I'll get to you right after. Thank you. Name and address.
Yeah, my name is Paul Ruggieri, 66 Wood Cove Drive, Coventry. Yeah, Ruggeri. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. Yeah, sorry. Thank you. Can you hear me now? Okay, I'm not a traffic expert, and I know that Mr. Landry has said he relies on the experts, and that's all fine and well. I've been on Wood Cove Drive for quite some time. Traffic has been an issue, especially during school season, and they go pretty fast down Magnolia Lane, Wisteria Drive, Wood Cove, all the way down to the schools and so on. So that's one concern I have. Another concern I have is number of vehicles. I do quite a bit of walking in the neighborhood. And when I go by all these driveways at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, most of them have 4 cars in the driveway. You know, so to say, well, 300 cars to accommodate 148 units, it could be double that. You know, most families today have children and they have kids that are driving cars. So it's not unrealistic to think that you could have 450 to 600 cars in that neighborhood. Okay. The other concern I have is I've been in Wood Estates now for over 40 years. One of the reasons I came to Wood Estates is because of half-acre lots, plenty of vegetation, Johnson's Pond. I'm blessed to have a property on Johnson's Pond, but I don't want to get into the fiasco that's going on there. But for the last 3 years, it's been a hell. It's been hell to pay, and a lot of the residents that live on the pond, or even in Wood Estates. I belong to the Wood Estates Resident Association as well as Johnson's Pond Association, and it helps keep up property values. The Wood Estates One of the values that people have moving into Wood Estates is that they can have access to the pond from the point. And that's been a big selling point for people coming here. It's also helped keep the value of our homes at the price that they should be. And Johnson's Pond, if this resolution doesn't get resolved with the social family, our property values are going to drop because no one's going to want to live on a piece of water that has invasive weeds growing, and they grow even more when the water is lowered. And when they hear social family is thinking about maybe putting in solar systems on top of the floating solar systems, I mean, it's ridiculous. So those are some of the concerns. My property value and the neighbors all have concerns about their property value. Frankly, as you all know, Coventry has of all the 39 cities and towns, Coventry has the largest geographic area. It seems to me that this property would be much better suited to, one, not for a sports complex, but for something like a field, a large field where the grasses are cut, people can bring their families. It's not a sporting field. I passed some in other communities where it's a big field and it's being used by the town. When you come into Coventry, one of the first things you're going to see is the cigar store or a cigar lounge, I should say. And then you would see this. And if this is just a standard development where houses are really close together, I would have less objection if this was a land was used for half-acre lots, half-acre residential lots.
Okay, keep it down,
could-
please.
it
I
could-
can't hear him.
You could be called, we have a Wood Estates, we have a Wood Estates now north, this could be Wood Estates south. Okay, so you'd end up, if you have half-acre lots, you're going to end up with less traffic. It's going to bring in tax money for the town. Higher value on the homes, yeah. I also feel that, the Almax Plaza has been vacant for decades. And I think, and I've learned that there is a possible agreement between the seller and the buyer to put in storage units. Now, Providence has banned any more storage units, and there's so many storage units that's around. It's an eyesore. It's not really a very good thing to have on Tyoke Ave. I think that if they wanted to put in low-income housing, that could be a prime site to do it. There's already traffic lights coming in and out of there. People can walk to the Burger King or close to other places that are right there. So anyway, I think property values is a key thing. People have moved into Coventry, moved into nice neighborhoods because they want to have places where they keep up their homes, keep up their properties. And I think it's going to increase the traffic, and it does impact getting on and off of 95. If I come up 95 south and try to get onto Route 3, these cars are going very fast over the hill. There's been accidents there before. It's not a good situation. And there's a lot of traffic there, as Senator Ratakis has mentioned. There's a lot of traffic that's getting onto 118. And we all have concerns about that. I think they shouldn't do this project here. They should find a better location. And this could be a very attractive entry point for people coming into Coventry to see a beautiful park that they could go and enjoy. But anyway, that's all for now.
All right, thank you. I'm going to take her first. You can be next. Thank you, sir. Come on up, ma'am. Name and address, please, for the record.
Cindy Podgurski, Podgurski, Circle Drive. My main concern is there are a lot of walkers in the neighborhood, and I cringe on a daily basis when I see people walking along Harkney Hill Road, bicycles. You just wait, they're gonna get hit. You start adding this amount of traffic, added on there. There are huge trucks coming in. There's a lot of Connecticut traffic. There are no sidewalks. There aren't anything. The more traffic you put in here, we all need to remember why we bought property where we did. It's a family neighborhood. It's a beautiful part of town. This is Newsnack Hill Road is not called Dead Man's Alley for no reason. How many people have died on that road just because of the speeds? I don't see this being sustainable in a family neighborhood and where everybody can walk their neighborhood, go out and ride their bikes. It just isn't safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up, sir.
My name is Donald Hall, Hall. I live at 102 Wisteria Drive. I have a couple of questions. Number one, the traffic on Wisteria Drive has been unbearable sometimes. I sometimes wait 10 minutes just to get out of my drive, especially when the kids are going to school or coming home from school. Okay, and then I have to go out onto Hill Farm Road and wait for the traffic to ease before I can turn onto Hill Farm Road. And then I come up to the intersection of Hockney Hill Road and I'm waiting there 5 or 6, 7 cars in line. And that all depends on how many cars are going down Hockney Hill Road. Mr. Reptakis supposedly, he made it better by this turning lane, but I've seen several accidents, even with that new turning lane. People that are going to turn, sometimes the cars go straight and you don't see those cars coming out. And it's because of the traffic. I've been a fire chief in Coventry, okay? I've been a fireman for 50 years. And I've seen many, many accidents on Newsnack Hill Road, Wisteria, Hill Farm Road, Route 3 at the intersection of Hockney Hill. And with more traffic, it's just going to be more deadly. Okay, also, from a fireman's point of view, I don't know how wide these roads are, but I'm concerned with the wideness of the roads in this development. Okay, as we know, a fire truck is like so many feet wide, and you have to take consideration of people trying to get around here, trying to get out if there's an incident there. Also, the town of Coventry right now, especially Central Coventry Fire District, doesn't have enough people to do the job. They're always calling in mutual aid for rescues, okay, and for fires. Sometimes the town is left with no emergency apparatus because they're all tied up in town with other people. So sometimes they might have to wait for West Greenwich to get there or for someone from another town to get there. So that's a concern. How much of these extra people that are going to be living here are going to contribute to the fire district responses? Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else in the center? Come on up, sir.
Gene Peltier, 17 Wood Cove Drive. My concerns from a few years back when we had the great flood in the town, 2010. My backyard had.
Could you talk right into the microphone, please?
Back in that flood, I live on 17 Wood Cove. I had 2 feet of water in my backyard. Luckily, when they built my house, they put it on a slab. All my neighbors were flooded. The fire department were there constantly pumping out. The lot that they wanted to develop this property on was also severely flooded at that time. As we know, these floods repeat. What are they going to do with all that water? Okay. The other concern a lot of other people voiced, it's even worse if you're driving 95 north and try to get off on Route 3. I do that with company trucks and sit there sometimes for a half hour trying to get onto Route 3 north to go home. This is only going to add more volume to that intersection, which the state tried to fix it by raising and making the vision pattern going over that bridge longer, but it's still a Russian roulette trying to pull out of that street. And it's just going to add more burden to that, as well as other people saying going down the opposite end, down by Walgreens and all through there, that mornings when I have to go through there, that is severely backed up and 4 or 5 turns of the light before you get through. You throw more traffic in there, is this gonna exacerbate? The other problem, Dunkin' Donuts, you look on the logs in West Greenwich. Okay, there are accidents there constantly because people back up, the lot's too small, they're backed up on Route 3. There are people in the turn lane that don't know how to use it, they're cutting across. Okay, you're just going to put more volume in there and put more people who are looking for the morning coffee on the way to work. It's just that whole area, okay, has congestion areas already that are bad. And I just think this, like other people saying, it's a bad spot for this size development. Putting half-acre lots in there would make more sense because it would fit into the master plan that's there already. And it would continue to beautify our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up, ma'am. Thank you, sir. Hi.
Hello, Lynn Bocchiaro, 40. Lynn Bocchiaro, Bocchiaro, 40 Pine Tree Road. So I'm going to echo what some of the other people have said about the traffic. We're relatively new to the area, but I do go into the Wood Estates and walk my dog. And so I'm coming from Pine Tree on Harkney Hill and making the left on Hill Farm. I appreciate the work that's been done to try to make that safer, but let me tell you, it may be 30-mile-an-hour speed limit on that road and 30-mile-an-hour on Hill Farm, as they said. That's not what people do in reality. When I look at this map and I see Road A and Hill Farm, I don't know how close those are together, but they look awfully close. I'm picturing people sitting at each one, trying to make a left turn, waving their heads back and forth as I do coming out of Pine Tree, which is dangerous because people are going 50, 60 miles an hour, waving their heads back and forth to try to make sure it's clear and trying to make left turns at the same time. It's a disaster waiting to happen. I don't know how that could possibly be safe. I'm not a traffic expert, but I don't understand it. So, and I do agree with many of the other comments about traffic on the other entrance there. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the center? Come on up, ma'am.
My name's Lynn Costa. I live on 9 Steer Lane. I just have a couple of things. It's basically about the traffic, same thing.
Could you speak right into the mic, please?
Yes, I live on Steer Lane. I come out Maple Root Road. It's like watching a tennis match. I don't know where that trip generator thing was. I went over one, I think it was on the other side of that Maple Root Road church. Why not put that trip generator between Maple Root and Route 3? Because I think you have people coming off Hill Farm taking a left more than taking a right. And I think you're gonna find there's a lot more traffic. The other thing is we have little or no pressure where I live, and I don't know if that's gonna affect the water at all. I can spit harder than I can get water out of my faucet right now. So that is another concern that I have. The other thing was also about the Dunkin' Donuts on Route 3 that other people said. It is lined up. I head down that way every morning to go to work. And also the other drawing that they had a couple of retention ponds. I don't see any retention pond here, so I don't know what they were going to do with any extra water. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up, ma'am.
My name is Marianne Levake, 7 Gentry Farms Drive in Coventry, obviously. So my question is, what is the financial impact for school, fire, and police? Has that question been asked? especially with school and resource help and special needs help? Has that been asked? And has that been looked at for the children in this development? Because my kid was a special needs kid, and it is difficult and challenging for that school department. So that's a big concern. Police, taxpayers pay a lot of money in this town. We're one of the highest paid, aren't we? And especially where I live on Gentry Farms Drive. And police and the fire, they work hard. We pay them for that. What is the financial impact? Do you guys have any information for me? And then my next question is this 10%, I'm hearing about a 10% for low income. I understand you get a federal return for the school department for bringing in 10% for low income, is that correct?
There has to be 10% low to moderate income housing.
In order
We do not have that. Coventry is now sitting at 535.
And do you have to have it? Do you have
The
to?
state wants us to get up to
But you don't have
10%.
to. You can
Yes.
decline.
Yes, we have to get to that point at some point.
But because it was my understanding with the research I did is that you don't have to.
Ma'am, it was a federal mandate that all towns have to be by 2025, 10% affordable housing in their community. We are currently sitting at, as the chairman said, at 5.35. So any development that comes in has to have affordable housing. And affordable housing doesn't mean low income housing. It's affordable housing for folks of like,
Okay, and I understand that.
okay,
But when you bring in this large development, my question to you again is financial for the school, the fire, and the police. The school department is a big budget for our taxes. Big. We are struggling as it is as taxpayers. Our town needs industry. Our town needs a tax base with industry to go down and see restaurants and boutique, whatever, more industry to bring in. Why, is that a big challenge for the board to bring in industry? Anyway, that's my big questions. School, police, and fire. As
Thank
our
you.
taxpayers.
Anybody else in the center? Come on up, sir.
Hello, thank you. My name's Bruce Balcom, Balkcom, as in Mary. And I live at 1118 Hill Farm Road, about 1.3 of a mile down on the road. The first question I wanted to ask you was, you said that we're at 5.35% on the requirement to get to 10%. How much is this project going to move that number upward? Does anybody know?
Depending on the total units that
As
this project
proposed?
has not been approved, 25% will be deemed affordable. I
Right.
can't tell you how it will affect the percentage, but it won't affect it a lot. We do have 92 all affordable units going in Woodland Manor 3 up and across the street.
Okay,
So we are showing good faith that we are taking on affordable housing.
but that's a big incentive.
But this is
to
a
get
comp
this.
permit, and just to clarify, a comp permit, that's why they can change density, because they have the affordable component in it.
Okay. It's still going to be a big percentage increase on that number. So that's a big incentive to get this project approved. The second comment that I have is when I travel in the morning, I often have to cut through Wisteria, like everybody has to. I've been backed up down to the bridge. So when I look at page 19, Mr. Bannon, and you say here it has a minor impact on the overall traffic operations, in all due respect, I don't agree with you. And I think most people here probably don't either. The last comments that I have is this. You folks are sitting on the Planning and Development Board, is that correct?
Planning.
Okay. Wouldn't it be better that a project like this, that everybody in the town that is in positions of authority should be concentrating on developing or bonding out maybe plans to extend our utilities out to western middle part of Coventry? People have said that we have the biggest landmass here. We have the biggest opportunity to bring in industry, developments like this, and that's where our concentration should be, in my opinion. And the last comment I have is, my wife's originally from Vermont. In Vermont, they have to do a comprehensive impact study. It doesn't just include traffic. It includes all of these other services that all of this is going to impact in our town. We should be paying for that. How does it affect fire, police, teachers, ambulance, all of that? Anyways, thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else in the center? Anybody on the right side? Come on up, ma'am.
Julie Pettis, Pettis, Kingswood Drive. I'm having a little difficulty understanding the entrance and exits to this. Am I correct in understanding that there's one entrance on Route 3 and one on Hockney Hill Road?
That's correct.
So those are the only two?
We have one that can go in through Wood Estates, but I think everybody had said that they wouldn't want that opened up. The fire department may want to put a crash gate there for emergency, but we don't know that yet.
Okay, is that what this is here?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else on my right? Come on up. Sorry.
My name is Karen Cretin, Chretien, Northup, 3 Northup Flat Road. I wanted to dovetail with Senator Raptakis. I understand the empirical data. I understand these people do this for a living, but having lived there for 32 years and driven down Hill Farm Road or Hockney Hill to Hill Farm Road, there are, particularly even with the improvements they've just made, there are so many near misses in accidents, because even adding a turn lane into the right lane, people going straight, the people pulling out left don't always see the people in the straight lane. And I have, over the last 3 months, 4 months, I've probably seen 10, 12 near misses. And my concern is those near misses, when you add another turn lane or a continuous turn lane, more people not seeing people, more people pulling out, those near misses will no longer be near misses. And that's really, I just wanted to express the humans, what you can see and what the numbers show are not, in my opinion, necessarily accurate. And that's all.
Thank you. Anybody else on this side? Does anybody else want to come up and speak? Come on up, sir, in the middle.
Michael Grattan, 94 Wisteria Drive. Short, Grattan. First of all, I want to just start by just saying I want to thank the board for sitting up here. You guys have been serving the town well, in my estimation, dealing with the microphone issue that certainly wasn't yours. I really feel for you. I also wanted to mention the fact that it is good to see so many people turn out for this. I've been to a number of these meetings already. I've already spoken my piece, but I did want to just offer a little clarity because I know it's public comment. So a lot of the things that people have brought up and questions they had brought up regarding landscaping, regarding water, traffic, and all that, a lot of those things have been previously addressed, and I know will continue to be addressed. Some of that was mentioned in the first meeting. This was a continuation of that meeting, which was really just focused on the traffic study, but a lot of that was presented at the first meeting, which I'm sure the minutes and all that would probably be available on the town website. So if anybody want to look that stuff up, they might be able to find that there. Just to reiterate some things I had said in the past and some questions that I have for further consideration. The water issue has been discussed before. We're still interested to see where all the water from this is going to be diverted. As we know, there's a lot of water issues on Wisteria Drive and the abutting neighborhoods, and that's something that's of great concern as to where those basins might be located, because everybody says, well, it'll be dispersed into the ground. Well, if all that water goes dispersed in the ground into a small area, into a concentrated area, that's really going to affect who's ever abutting those basins. Regarding the traffic and the fire apparatus, one thing that I would like to hear about is what is the on-street parking situation? With you having all these houses with short driveways and maybe a one-car garage or something of that nature, people have friends that come over. Where is all that overflow going to be? How is that going to affect the ability for fire apparatus to get down the street? Amazon deliveries, Amazon delivery truck parks, fire apparatus comes around. You got to move the Amazon. If these roads are too narrow and you got to get fire apparatus around one of these corners where an Amazon truck is parked, for example, how's that going to happen? And let's face it, in a development like this, there's going to be Amazon deliveries, UPS, all that sort of thing. I don't want to take any more time. I know at some point the attorney representing our neighborhood might be speaking, so I don't want to take up any of that time. Again, I just want to thank the board for all your work on this and suffering through a lot of what we're suffering through, and we appreciate your service to the town. I want to thank all my fellow taxpayers and residents for coming out tonight and being involved. And the only way we can see something that we can live with and that is conforming to what we're used to having is by showing up and voicing our opinions and being respectful to each other. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else in the center? Anybody else on the left side? Seeing none, Mr. Revens, would you like to come up?
Thank you, Mr. Flynn and members of the Coventry Planning Commission. For the record, my name is John C. Revens Jr. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Revens, St. Pierre and Wiley with offices at 946 Centerville Road in Warwick. I represent Grant and Marcia Southard, Casey and Shanna Factor, Mike and Amy Groton, Melissa and Chris Jones, Joanne Passarelli, Eric and Lynn Bartolome, and Angela and Gerard Levine. My clients have been here, as all of you have, through these hearings, and we very much appreciate your questions, your attention, and the very fine way, Mr. Chairman, that you've conducted the meeting, and we appreciate and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this evening in behalf of my clients. First, my clients would much prefer to see this entire parcel, if it's going to be developed for residential purposes only. Where it's better now than it was when we were here a few weeks ago, and we're happy about that. We'd rather see that retail pad site be more residential. If there is going to be a retail pad site on the property, we would ask that there be a restriction that there be no restaurant, no fast food, no cannabis sales. We would also ask that this property meet all the requirements of the ordinance, just like everybody else has to meet them. There's a lot of relief that's being asked for here. It's not necessary, and it just makes the development more intense than it needs to be. And we hope you would see fit to have the applicant follow those existing regulations. With regard to the entrance to the premises, it's up by the retail pad site. If you look at that on your plan, you'll notice that that driveway is really a roadway that services the entire proposed development. And if you look at it carefully, you'll see that as it comes into the premises and moves to the right of the parcel, it goes right along the back of the houses where the proposed buffer zone is. Now, a number of you who I've appeared before many times before have seen a lot of subdivision and housing applications in your career on the Planning Commission. I've never seen one before where you have houses on a public street, and now instead of having houses or some other development behind them, you're going to have another roadway. And in effect, it's a road because that road services the entire proposed development. Typically, you'd have houses on both sides of that road as it comes in. So you're going to have a situation where those first 3 or 4 parcels are going to have a road in their front yard that they use to access their community, and a road in their backyard that these 150 or 60 or 70, however many homes it turns out to be, plus a retail plaza, are going to be coming in through their backyard. So that's not good planning. It's not sound development, and it's a circulation issue and a layout issue. So we would strongly ask you, please, to ask the applicant, if this is moving forward, to reconfigure that access point so that as you come in on the right-hand side, there's going to be single-family house lots there, like there is in every other neighborhood. So the people on the other side don't have to suffer of the inconvenience and the use and enjoyment of their property, which will certainly be diminished, and perhaps even their property values, because now in effect they have a street in the front yard and a street in the backyard. We'd also like to ask you to make sure that all the exterior lighting is dark sky compliant. We'd like to ask you if there's a retail store that there be no loading dock involved with the store. We'd ask you to eliminate the access point that might be for a fire gate, and that land should be conveyed to the abutting property owners. I think that's on the Wisteria Drive area. There's no reason to keep that there. And I think, and I hope when the fire department looks at it, they'd much prefer to access the site from the main streets and not have to drive through a neighborhood to get there. So I don't think there's going to be really any need for that as you move along. We'd ask that the landscape buffer zone that's proposed be enforced, that a landscape architect review that proposed buffer zone and submit a plan to you of what they will do to enhance it so that it's a real buffer zone. We would ask, if it's approved, that any documentation insist that that's a permanent no-cut zone. And not only is it documented in the plan approval, but there would be signage that would be permanent signage that would be all along that buffer that would indicate to all the people who live there that they can't cut it. And that they would also be bounded with granite bounds so that they would know it's not part of their backyard and they can't put their shed there or their bocce court there or their croquet court or their volleyball net or use it in any way for active purposes. I think that would be a big plus also for my clients. And they may want to address you individually, but I think I summed up what their major concerns are, and they're all general to the project except for the access up in that top right-hand corner, which is really quite unusual to have it swinging so close into somebody's backyard. And if they insist on keeping the retail plaza pad, excuse me, and you want to approve that, they should shift some of the housing to the other side of that roadway and move it as much as they can so that there's residential there and not the road in their backyard. and be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you, Mr. Flynn and members of the commission.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Revens from the board? I think we're good, Mr. Revens.
Thank you, sir.
Does anybody else have anything to say? Come on up. Then we'll let the applicant address all the comments.
Casey Factor. Yeah. Casey Factor, 92 Wisteria Drive. 92 Wisteria Drive. Yep. So just one thing, because the meetings were split, a lot of stuff was said at the last meeting and then we never got to come up and say anything. And so I feel like a lot of those fresh topics aren't in the minds of the group out here, but one of them, and was mentioned by most on the planning committee, was the density. And I know I think they moved it from 157 units to 146. So estimate wise, it's still, 29 acres of land, went from 5.4 properties per acre versus 5 properties per acre now. So, and they mentioned it as an improvement, but it's minimal improvement. I know that was something that everyone talked about. I don't know if that changes the opinions of the board, but I just wanted to mention that. I don't know if that was picked up along the way. So.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Cody, is there anybody on Zoom that would like to speak? Anybody on Zoom, raise their hand if they would like to speak. Joanne?
Yes, Joanne Tandy, Tandy, 13 Magnolia Lane. I've lived in Wood Estates for 30 years, over 30 years now. One question I do have with the traffic study is, I don't think did they look at the traffic, how it's going to impact Wood Estates? We get tons of traffic going down Magnolia Lane and tons of traffic going through the neighborhood in general. I don't know if they've examined how this new traffic pattern is going to be affecting the residents' traffic patterns in Wood Estates. I suspect more people might be using Wood Estates as perhaps a cut through the residents of that new development. Also, the other comment I have to make is during the last meeting, I believe the developer came forward and said that this development was compatible or comparable to the housing that is currently in the Wood Estates area. So I would have to disagree with that. First of all, it's density. Second of all, these are much smaller homes right on top of each other. I don't know what the garages are, perhaps a one-car garage. So in my opinion, that is not in keeping with the residents that are currently in the Wood Estates area. Personally, I would like to see more single-family homes that would be comparable to what we have in the Wood Estates area, which would potentially give the builder, the developer, a higher priced home and perhaps increase the tax basis for the community. I am glad to see that the soccer facility is gone. I also do have concerns about what type of business is going to be going in that pad and what the hours of that business would be. Thank you very much.
Is that it? Is there anybody else? Anybody else in the audience? I will keep public hearing open because the applicant is going to address some of the comments that were just said tonight. If you want to come up, Mr. Landry. I have a whole list here, so.
I took a list as well, so hopefully it's close to matching.
Just for clarification, it was said that these units, they will all be 2-bedroom?
Let me just confirm that with John. That is.
So two-bedroom is a lot less impact to the school system for sure.
Sure, and on that point, I know it concerns a lot of people. Under the Low and Moderate Income Housing Act, it's expected that there will be fiscal impacts that will result from higher density housing. In that the housing is needed for families. Of the little over 5% that the town has, a very, very high percentage of that, it's in our application materials, is actually beds in senior housing units that are counted as if they're housing units. The need in the town is extraordinary, with people at a cost burdened in finding and being able to purchase houses. So we could have proposed 3-bedroom units. The 2-bedroom units really does moderate those impacts. There will be children that'll be in the school system, but not a lot of them. Usually large families don't want to move into 2-bedroom houses. One of the things we were required to do when we proposed this development, it was to submit a fiscal impact analysis of what this development would cost the town in terms of teachers and fire and other municipal services in relation to the taxes that would be collected. And because it's a 2-bedroom community, that it was done by a very qualified guy, Joe Lombardo, who served as a town planner for many municipalities. He spent as much time on the municipal side of things as he has on private consulting. And he analyzed 2-bedroom developments all over the state of Rhode Island. He's got a database that he builds on. And that report indicated that this project, as proposed, would have a net positive fiscal impact to the town of $500,000 a year. So and that's not a criteria that comes into play under the Low and Moderate Income Housing Act. There's no standard for denial or approval that has anything to do with fiscal impacts. And this game is over. This game is over. Or this process is over once the town does achieve the 10%. You know, once that goal is achieved, there are no applications that could come in under the Low and Moderate Income Housing Act. We don't have half-acre lots or 1-acre lots. Everybody would like to see that. One of the problems with the affordable housing crisis in Coventry and elsewhere is that the land cost associated with a half-acre lot or a 1-acre lot, combined with the cost of building a home on that lot, is unattainable for people. It just doesn't work. The only way it works is either through large, big box, multifamily, or something like this that is a type of multifamily, but that has higher density. If the density is kept at the standards that the town is used to, there's no progress made on achieving the low and moderate income housing goals. And we're really talking about moderate income here. In 2004, when the town put together an affordable housing plan, this is in our application materials, and I think I covered it last time, but maybe everybody wasn't here. The town's plan was to have 850 new affordable housing units by 2025. And so far, they've achieved 91 without changing things. The zoning scheme has basically stayed the same it was. We're not saying anybody in Coventry is against affordable housing. We see the opposite, that they've made plans to try to get there. And one of those plans is to take sites like this that don't need another retail location, that don't need another storage facility, that don't need another convenience store, on Gooseneck Hill Road. But that should be upzoned from commercial to residential, and neighbors want it 100% upzoned. But we've gotten as close to that as we possibly can and still be able to have a mixed-use development. We've only got one retail space, and we can't tell the tenant what to do if they're conforming with the zoning requirements for that area. Right now, the whole site could be used for what that retail pad looks like, and much more intense commercial use. So it's been narrowed down. It's been pulled away from the homes. Yeah, there's a driveway there, but deliberately that pad site wasn't put right up against the residential homes. It was pulled off of the residential homes, and that was deliberate on the part of the applicant. So that, because that issue came up a few times, fiscal impacts and so forth, I thought I'd address those up front. But what I can do is go through the listing. I won't cover something that's already been covered. The landscape plan has already been substantially prepared. It will be submitted shortly. You'll hear more about that. We never expected to go through this process without a landscape plan and some type of buffering and screening and so forth. And the landscape buffer between the adjacent neighborhood, it's 40 feet vegetated buffer, and then another 20 feet before you could actually have a building. So it's a substantial setback. We're not asking for a handshake on that. That would obviously be solidified in a condition of approval after everything's engineered. When we get to the final plan stage, we'll have homeowners documents that have covenants that require that landscape buffer to be maintained. We have said we're going to provide it. We're not going to run away from any reasonable obligation that we actually have to have that there. Senator Raptakis and the RIDOT, this project, I think, presents an opportunity to re-engage DOT on the idea of another turning lane, the types of issues that have been raised with them in the past. I mean, we can't do that. A lot of these traffic issues are not being caused by this project. Both traffic reports, your traffic engineer and our traffic engineer, say that the volumes is so high in this area and the road capacities are so high that this development is not going to make a significant difference, not a measurable difference, not a difference in levels of service that is material from existing conditions. Everything that people were complaining about, and they may well be justified complaints, involve existing conditions that will not, by opinion of both sets of traffic engineers, be materially exacerbated in a way that anyone would notice from this particular development. And, that may not be that obvious or believable for someone who's stuck behind a school bus during school hours or people that are waiting at various times. But the way traffic studies are conducted, and this is in the report, they're done at the peak hour of traffic for the location. So they're based on the worst conditions of the day. They even did a Saturday morning analysis. The whole traffic study is based on worst case conditions, not best case conditions when nobody's on the road. It's just the opposite. The report would have no credibility if it wasn't based on worst case conditions. There is a wetland area on the site. We're well aware of it. Our engineers have delineated that wetland in accordance with DEM methods. But as the project proceeds to the preliminary stage, we will need a freshwater wetlands permit, not an aquatic permit or whatever the Kmart needed back in the 90s for its pavement of everything. And imagine that project and its impacts in comparison to this one, but that one's more closely zoned to what the existing zoning is for this property, and that's one of the reasons why the comprehensive plan wants to see it changed and to include higher density housing. But we're required to have our verified wetland, our delineated wetland verified by DEM, and the limits of that wetland established. We are keeping all required setbacks from that wetland area on this design. We'll be required to do that as well if DEM changes the delineation as part of its verification. We'll have to observe all impacts, and we can't harm that wetland in any way, including putting too much water into it. All of those things are measured at the preliminary plan stage. And DEM is also going to have to undertake a stormwater management approval analysis in accordance with the state stormwater manual, which we've conceptually designed the project around. And they're going to have to determine that at the end of the day, this project handles the roof runoff, the driveway runoff, all of the runoffs, the grading runoffs that may be changed. All of that has to be managed with very sophisticated calculations, and we have to satisfy them that this development will not result in any increase in either the volume or the rate of the existing conditions on that property, that we're not doing anything to make it any worse for anybody that's beyond our boundary line. It can only be made better. It can't be made a glass of water worse than under existing conditions. And that takes into consideration not just surface runoff, but infiltration and the various methods that are used to accomplish that. So this is traffic. The septic, what if Mr. Assalone doesn't reach agreement with us? We indicated at the last meeting that we have reached agreement with Mr. Assalone. The property does have access to the existing sewer. A lady asked the question of will there be septics there if for some reason Mr. Assalone changes his mind or breaks the agreement. We have no illusions about having septic systems to support a project that's designed this way. The project has been designed in a way that would take advantage of the capacity of the site to be sewer and the access to sewer. That's another reason why it is in the comprehensive plan and identified in the affordable housing production plan, along with other areas that are zoned this way and have these capabilities to support higher density residential development. Property values are going to be determined by market conditions. There are 25% of these units are low and moderate income units, but they come with, their values will be lower because those 25% have to be sold subject to a deed restriction only to households that meet the moderate income maximums. They can't earn more, the household can't earn more than a certain amount of income. And that number changes almost daily as interest rates change, and will be bound by the numbers that are in effect when the development is approved. What people can afford now and what the affordable prices have to be is less today than it was when we started this project, because now the interest rates have gone up to the point where the maximum sale prices are less for us at the moment. That may change, it may be the same, but it'll be determined by what's in effect down the road. So the price for the affordable unit won't be the same as the prices for market rate units within our development that are not subject to those deed restrictions. But it's not going to affect the market because the people buying the market rate units are not subject to that kind of deed restriction. And they won't be competing with the people who are buying houses that have that deed restriction. And neither are any of the other units in Wood Estates or anywhere in this surrounding area are there houses that are burdened by the same types of permanent deed restrictions that require affordable housing occupants as the lower priced units in our development. So the non-deed restricted will go by market rate, new construction, 2-bedroom houses, the nicest product that will have been introduced into Coventry in a long time. The homes in Wood Estates will be valued as half-acre homes that have certain amenities that our project doesn't have, that doesn't have deed restricted units, and the market will dictate what prices will be garnered there. And they don't have a 2-bedroom limitation either. So we're comparing apples and oranges. They're two different markets for buyers between those developments. And property values is sometimes considered by zoning boards, but it's not a consideration under the Low and Moderate Income Housing Act. Traffic, stormwater, half-acre lots, Kent County water pressure. We've introduced the will serve letter from Kent County Water Authority. They've done a thorough modeling analysis of the capacity of the system to deliver the volume of water we need and whether they can deliver it at pressures that are equal to the national fire protection standards for water pressure for fire service and domestic service. And we're beyond those pressures. They've got a very sophisticated way of modeling and telling what the pressures will be at this particular spot. And they did that analysis. It was an expensive proposition to complete, but they certified that they were satisfied that they can deliver that pressure to this site. We talked about the fiscal impact, the 860 units. The stormwater management, the turning radii came up again. We always present at preliminary plan stage, turning, there's a model of formula, a computerized formula that all traffic engineers use. We look at the size of the fire protection apparatus and make sure that it can make safely all the required turns, and obviously have no objection to being held to that standard. With respect to Mr. Revans's comment, my client's really gone out of his way to work with these folks. It's been constructive on both sides. We think they've been reasonable, and we think we've been reasonable. The residential only, I think, is a problem legally and practically. This is a mixed use area. There has to be some measure of mixed use here. I don't hear anybody hankering for more commercial here, but it's hard to have less. We have to have a commercial component here, and we've picked a very benign one purposefully, and one that won't simply be redundant of everything else that's already in the area. Can they have a loading dock? If they're a retail operation, they should have a loading dock, but the loading dock should be properly screened and so forth. And we can have homeowner covenants or land unit owner covenants that require screening of dumpsters. And I can't tell you what the hours of location are, but everybody's got to observe the noise ordinance. They can't be backup alarms and things like that are in violation of the zoning ordinance. It wouldn't be any different, and it would be a lot better than if the whole site, all 30 acres, was full of some type of commercial use like that, there'd probably be 30 or 40 or 50 loading docks in there undertaking much heavier things than a retail location under the way the property is base zoned. The strong preferences for no access to the emergency, no access to the fire gate. That's our preference as well. We probably will be able to do that. The no cut is good for 40 feet, not 60 feet. I think the neighbors understand that. In terms of supplementing what's there, there's a substantial vegetative buffer there for 40 feet, a very substantial vegetative buffer. If we have a gap, for example, we have a gentleman who has a wetland feature adjacent to his property, apparently man-made, but nevertheless a feature. And it's between us and him, and we would, for him, have to do something special. It's not very big, but it is a wetland feature. We're already observing the required setbacks, but in his case, we can't put trees inside that wetland feature, but we could do evergreens or some other vegetative screening to try to compensate somewhat for the fact that his house is a little more difficult to buffer and screen than everybody else in that neighborhood. We're aware of that issue. He made us aware of it before the last meeting. We've heard of it again between these two meetings, and it hasn't lost our attention or our concern. And I think that is those are all of the main issues, questions that weren't either answered or redundant of questions that were put by others.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just for a second, I still have some reservations, concerns, and questions, but I just wanted to clarify a few things that I think, because I want to make sure, based on some of the comments, that there's no misinformation or misconceptions. But I did have the same question with regards to the number of bedrooms in the unit. So all of the single-family units are going to be 2-bed.
Correct.
And then there are duplexes on this plan. And it appeared to me that, and I don't know the road name, but the footprint is much smaller on one street versus another. And that's why I wasn't sure, but they're all going to be 2-bed. Are they just smaller, or this isn't to scale?
Well, there won't be anything more than 2 bedrooms.
No, I wanted to know if you were going to have any 1-bed.
There may be.
They look much smaller. I mean, it's the street that's closest to the commercial development. Road D, I think it is. Those two unit dwellings, at least the scale on my plan, look substantially smaller than the other 2-unit dwellings that are shown on the plan.
I can see that, and Mr. Kent has just noted that those would have 1 bedroom.
They will be 1 bedroom. Okay. And
oh, I'm sorry. They're 2-bedroom, but they're 2-story.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, we didn't have the benefit. So that's why I wanted to ask the question. And again, just because I heard this mentioned a few times, this is similar to a condominium development. All of the open space, the roads and the buffer and the landscaping are going to be maintained by the homeowners association. So there would be no individual unit owner that would then be going and putting things in their backyard that are prohibited by the condominium documents, or extending their backyard, or putting additional buildings or sheds or things like that on the property. Because I heard a few people, they seem to think, at least they may have had the impression, that these were going to be individual house lots that were smaller than a half acre. This is one planned unit development, probably the wrong term, that will be managed by a homeowners association or a property management company. and they will be responsible for all of the roadways, the sidewalks, the landscaping and the lawn to make sure that's well kept.
Right.
And the town will not be required to do any plowing or
Correct.
municipal waste pickup or anything like that. Obviously, they will need to get fire apparatus in there. I see in a couple of places, it looks like the road width is labeled as 24, but in the narrative, we have 22. Are the roads 22 or 24?
They're 22 at the moment. We've noted the concern of
Yeah.
Public Works to have them be 24. We're engaged in that discussion now. We have sidewalks on the plan on both sides of the driveway of the private roads, which is not that common in a development like
understood.
this. And if we had sidewalks on one side, it would allow it would allow a wider road width, and it could also help get us even further away from the adjoining development by a few feet. And that's the nature of the discussion we're hoping to pursue as we move through this.
Understood. I just wanted to kind of get that out there to let folks know these are not single-family home sites that are
Correct.
that are being developed. I still have some reservations, other questions. I just wanted to kind of get that out. I noticed there were a couple people leaving, and if we end up taking a break like the last time, I didn't want people to leave with the misinformation.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to take a 10-minute break. Mr. Landry, would you like to come up and, we got some questions from the board members? Any board members have any questions for Mr. Landry?
Yes.
Go ahead, Mr. Smith.
So, Mr. Landry and Mr. Kent, thank you for your presentation. One of the concerns that I see is, we had, and I brought it up at the last meeting, so I over reiterate it, was the width of the roads, and you had just mentioned it again, but we had a retired fire chief came up earlier, and he mentioned some concerns with the widths of the roads and the size of the apparatus, and if people have to get in and out of the development during an emergency, and if you have two fire trucks trying to pass each other or support vehicles coming in after, I'd really like to see the width of the road wider, right, to like 24 feet, so two pieces of fire apparatus or a rescue can move when there could be a line of fire engines lined up or something like that. So the
Yeah.
road width and getting rid of the donut holes, which was also mentioned earlier. Those are difficult for big trucks to get around.
Okay, thank you. I think we can get there. We may have to talk about this, the sidewalks as I mentioned, but we'd like to be able to get to the 24 if we can. So we're working hard on that issue.
Thank you.
Mr. Kenny, go ahead.
I know, during the traffic study, I know there was some concern about distance between the entrance to the new development and, Hill Farm Road. Could the, traffic engineer just, go over that again to try and ease the public's concern about site distance, how long it is? Because I know that was a concern. I don't know if it was adequately addressed to, for the public.
Again, for the record, Paul Bannon with Beta Group. In our location of the driveways, the intent was to get as far away from the signalized intersection, influence the queuing, the stacking associated with that on both driveways. Then you get into Maple Route and its proximity, and you, from a practical design standpoint, you create a four-way instead of an offset intersection. But as we move forward, we'll take a harder look at that and work with the Department of Transportation on, exactly where it should be to operate both efficiently and safely. Again, the traffic coming out of our driveway is negligible compared to what's coming out of Hill Farm. You've got 250 cars coming out of Hill Farm in the morning. We'll have 25. So we'll have one car in our driveway where they have 4 to 6 cars queued on Hill Farm Road. So it's a different animal in what our driveway will experience versus what people experience on Hill Farm Road.
Thank you, Mr. Bannon. I appreciate your comments. I know there's still a lot of concern about the density of cars that will be coming out of that development. I know you're saying 25. I know a lot of people don't agree with that, that there would be more. I know you're an expert in traffic engineering and stuff like that, but I'm just speaking where I know the public is at, so.
And we have multiple driveways, and that's
Right.
what I said, and it'll be much easier to turn right onto Newsnack Hill Road than to turn left onto Harkney Hill to go south. So, that'll be mitigated. And that's why the volumes are a lot less than, what people would anticipate.
Thank you very much. I
You're welcome.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
John, go ahead.
I have a few questions. First for Paul, if you have a second. Oh. The average daily traffic was based on January 2023. Do you have a more specific time frame on that?
We did mid-January counts because we started the project back in January through it and worked through March collecting data because we originally submitted the report or finished the report in April as part of the original development. We just updated it in July to change the trip gen of the future condition.
And then the second question I had is the 7 AM to 8 AM timeframe, does that envelope the school start time here at the high school?
Yes, I believe we counted from 7 to 9. And we also did 24-hour data counts and identified what the peak 2 hours are. And in that peak 2 hours that we did the manual counts, we'd find what that one hour
Okay,
peak was.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. I do have some more questions, though. Reading the fiscal impact, I had some questions about the comparisons that were made. Most of the comparisons are from, or all the comparisons are from newer developments. I think the oldest one was around 10 years. Do you have any information on more established developments that were in the 15, 20-year timeframe?
I do. We were talking about the school age
Yes,
children.
yes.
I think Mr. Lombardo I saw some newer ones in there, Kettle Point, for example.
Yeah, I think almost all of them were fairly on the new side. I'm looking to see if he
Oh,
if he could put
older
in some
ones.
more older, more established ones.
Well, there's a lot of older ones in there. Maybe they weren't they weren't apparent by the names of the developments. Usually it's hard to find new ones. He's been keeping that list for at least 15 years.
I think I just want to see, so just showing the older ones, I have no idea how the population changes as the development ages. And I think that's just important to show that whether there is or is not a increase in the student population as the development ages. And
No,
that's kind
I
of what
can assure you, and we could get a statement from Mr. Lombardo because I didn't write the report, but I've been working with him for at least 20 years. And when I see that fiscal impact report, I look at it all the time and I see projects that have been on there forever. And then some of them that I was involved in getting, well, maybe forever. They probably are 8, 9, 10 years old, 15 years old. And he adds to it to make it current. And I'm always looking to try to make sure he's got recent ones so that we'd be able to tell if the patterns were changing. But people are having fewer kids and the school populations have been going down. I don't know if there's anything different in Coventry that is an outlier in that regard, but pretty consistently there are fewer children in the newer developments than in the older ones. But I can assure you that list is a pretty very diverse set of developments all over the state.
And my last question was on the houses that are designated affordable. I understand the sale value of how it's determined. Is that the same way for resale in the future? And who is in charge of setting that resale value in the future? Is it the town?
It's
Or is it another
it's Rhode
public-
Island Housing.
Rhode Island
And there's a purchase price calculator. That's the name of it on their website. Purchase price calculator that takes into consideration a list of things. The people have to disclose their incomes. You have to know what the condo fees are, the taxes. And they want to make sure that that household is not paying more than 30% of their income for housing. So as those expenses get higher, the house price has to be lower to make sure that people who are in that 120% of median income can still be paying only 30% of their income. So that affects who the buyers can be. And Rhode Island Housing also establishes a maximum price that you can charge for the affordable units that you can't get higher than, no matter what the income of the applicant is. And that's also roughly based on town by town statistics. And it changes, that changes every year or so. The calculator changes regularly as interest rates change.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Mike. Hi, Mr. Landry.
Hello.
I have a couple of questions and then some concerns also. One of my questions has to do with, because it will be a condominium type development and the town will not be providing trash pickup. Do you have any plans for, they're gonna be like dumpsters on the property? Because one of the things I thought of, if with 146 units, and I'm not a trash expert, but I would imagine you'd probably have to have 10 or 12 dumpsters.
I think that's,
Where would
I'm
they
gonna
go?
ask my client whether this is, I think that's highly unlikely. It's more typical that a service is contracted for that comes into the development and stops at every house, and not that you wouldn't be having. In a part, when we had multifamily, I think that might have been possible for the multifamily, but not this configuration. Yeah, Mr. Ken has confirmed, each unit will have its own.
Each one will
trash
have its own.
service, yes.
Okay. Is there any plan for, and I've tried to kind of visualize it in my head. I know some of the units have 2-car garages with 2 spaces.
Mhm.
So you could fit 4 cars potentially.
Yeah.
And some others, a 1-car garage with 2 spaces. Are there any plans, any thought to like visitor parking? If anyone were to have company, a birthday party, where would people park?
Yeah, we have not designated visitor parking, nor have we definitively determined that there could be no on-street parking. I think that's something we'll have to look at. It's not unusual to see places for off-street, for excess parking, Super Bowl Sunday parking or whatever. We're not specifically providing for that, but that's something that we can take into consideration.
Okay. Another thing, the buffering, I really, before I can even decide on anything, I know you mentioned you have a landscape plan, more
Yes.
detailed coming.
Yes.
You know, and one of the things, I know it's not presented here, but some of these units, one in particular, 33 feet off of Hill Farm Road. I would imagine there would have to be some extensive buffering there. No one wants to be sitting at the stop sign on Hill Farm Road, looking through someone's slider, you know, through the back of their unit when there's no screening. And the same goes for, on the main roads, on Harkney Hill Road and Nooseneck Hill, 38, 44 feet. That's not a lot of distance off of the main road where cars are always stopped at the lights. And then one of the last thing, a concern, everybody mentioned it at the last meeting up here, and a lot of people in the room have mentioned it, and density. And I do agree with you to an extent that this is a less intense proposal with the removal of the soccer aspect. But I don't see it as less dense. I understand that 3 bedrooms, now they're gonna be 2, but to go from 153 to 146 units, it seems like a lot to me, and it seems very congested. And I think a reduction in the number of units, some type of a compromise, I would like to see looked at, and I think you could still accomplish your goal of providing affordable housing and delivering a nice product to the people that will be coming in here. And also it'll work for the people that live here now. But density, I think, is still, I think it's still a lot, personally.
I understand. You know, part of the buffering and screening, you know, if you can manage the traffic and the visual impacts to the abutters are not there, it's a separate development. you've got to get your density in somehow to make these projects work, to build these roads, do these drainage, pay for the landscaping. Every house that we build, every 4 houses that we build has to support the full construction cost. Every 3 houses that we build has to support the full construction cost of a 4th house, plus that house's contribution to the overall infrastructure. So it's all, the only way you could do these projects is with the density. And that's why the density bonuses, I mean, we'd have been better off proposing this project next year, because the new state law that went into effect actually crystallized the number of units you could have depending on the size of the parcel, and established much higher density bonuses than were clearly available previously. And that's what it's all about. I mean, you just can't build these things. There's no public money that comes into building these affordable units. In the old days, the government would build a 20-story elderly housing project. It wouldn't cost this town a nickel. And those all get counted as affordable housing units. Well, it's these developers that are building these units and the infrastructure that serves them, the sewer and everything else. And they're paying for them with the density. So it's not a question of greed. The returns on these projects are modest returns. We filed financial pro forma with Rhode Island Housing. We filed it with this application. They're standard returns for residential development and profit contractors who've been business for a long time. There's nobody making tons of money here. There's some profitability that makes these projects make sense. But without the density, no one would do these projects. They would never happen. And the town, none of the municipalities would have these. So it's, I mean, again, no one's running to the bank on this. We have to prove that to Rhode Island Housing, by the way, with the financial pro forma. There's a development expert that goes out, looks at the property, evaluates the financial model for the project. And they don't issue a letter of eligibility if there are issues along those lines. So, I mean, we're trying to get a balance here. We could have 4 buildings on this property with a lot more units than we're showing now, and spreading them out and having longer roads and all that's associated with that. That, I think, would have been more objectionable to the people that John Kent's been talking to and that Mr. Evans represents, and that there's been a good dialogue going. They didn't want to see those buildings. And so you spread them out, and then it looks like a lot more, but you're still dealing with a, fairly small number of units per acre in relation to what even the town would characterize as high density housing. High density under the comprehensive plan is defined as 1 unit for every 0.05 acres. That's 2,000 square feet. And on this project, that would be about twice, that would be about 20 units per acre to be characterized as high density. So it may seem like high density, but it's in this world of low and moderate income housing, in this world of housing now that has to be buildable and affordable. It really isn't. It's a question of how you do it. And I haven't had a developer, 43 years of doing this, that's more patient and concerned about trying to not have issues. His office is a very short distance from where this development is going to be built.
I know where it is.
People have walked in to have discussions, and he's not going to flip it to somebody else from Toll Brothers or something to go and build it. He's going to be there like on his and his family's other developments. So it does seem like a lot, but in the bigger picture of things, we just did one we have one in Hopkinton Rhode Island, that they've never seen anything. They only issue about 30 building permits in a whole year. And the project they're approving there is 200 units, and it looks a lot like this. It's not something you see every day. It's something you never see in Hopkinton, but this is something closer to what you'd see in Coventry. I mean, it's a town that has a great diversity of housing types. Something like this, the Wood Estates, much more rural and also very high density.
Thank you. I'm good. Thank you.
Anybody on this side have any questions? Go ahead, Mrs. Albert.
Okay, so I have a question on the new paperwork that was submitted. I don't see where you have any of your stormwater runoff, any of the retention ponds that were in there originally, those are gone. So where is all that runoff gonna go?
Well, I can have Mr. Hemingway do that. They, for conceptual master planning purposes, they're looking at locations, not necessarily sizing. There aren't a lot of as many detention ponds as there used to be. The stormwater regulations of the state are looking more at swales and infiltration and not hard stormwater collection systems where there are as many ponds, but I can ask Sam to address it at least conceptually at what they expect it to look like, if you'd like.
Yes, please.
And actually, really, as a point of clarification, the supplement that went in was to advance the modifications that are being construed by the applicant. So we fully expect to update all of the sheets that were incorporated. It touches on the landscaping, it touches on the grading, it touches on erosion control. So we are anticipating stormwater management of basically the same magnitude. It's somewhat less because the amount of impervious area has gone down with both the unit reduction and the square footage of the commercial spaces. So there will be a slightly less drainage than was initially shown on those original drawings. We expect to be updating all the sheets. I've already talked to the planner about getting the full set to reflect these. We wanted to get the input of the board, get the direction on the turnarounds, on the width of the pavement, the sidewalks. We'll incorporate all of that information and present it a little more thoroughly when we have time to do that. Again, we were jumping pretty quickly. We thought to incorporate the changes that we've seen and get it in front of this board so that we could all talk about it tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Again, the parking, I had a question about the parking, but like, fellow chairman already asked you that question. What about the wildlife that lives in that area? There's a colony of groundhogs. They got brought up once and then got discarded. DAM been involved? What's gonna happen to that poor family of woodchucks? There's a huge colony of them and all the other wildlife that lives there. I mean, we're talking about putting in a massive, I don't know, development. I mean, that's a city. I moved to the country. That's city to me. I think that's the biggest problem you're having with the density and with the people that live here. We moved to the country. We don't want to live in the city. Spread it out more, make it more attractive to us. Put in some parks, get something in there that makes it more attractive. That's not attractive to us. That's just a block of houses. It looks terrible. On top of it all, you're destroying wildlife and you're adding more traffic to an area that's already a terrible traffic area to begin with.
Yeah.
So I think you really need to look at those pieces because the density is huge. The wildlife that you're uprooting and making move into the neighborhoods and everywhere else, it's not good for them.
Yeah.
And I get it. We're going to build and we're going to misplace our wildlife and that's all well and good. But when we don't have any wildlife and we have no food on this earth, well, then that's going to be our own doing. So we need to make sure that we're making concessions for this.
Okay, well, there's a place for everything, and wildlife is not one of the standards for approval or denial of these projects. For as far as anyone can tell, the comprehensive plan in the town and the zoning ordinance has drawn this property up for commercial development. So, you know, whatever the critters are that are there, that was not and is not the town's vision for this property. The housing production plan looks at trying to upgrade, upzone the property from commercial to a more benign use of residential. It's not contemplated for this piece of property to be the place for wildlife. It's a big town. The town has the
Wildlife
ability.
lives everywhere. It's a big town. The wildlife doesn't know where the rest of the woods are. I mean, that's really that was not a very nice remark. Oh,
Okay.
sorry. So because that's not what we had envisioned. Okay, well, I didn't envision that when I moved to Coventry, I was gonna have a bear living in my backwoods, but I do. Okay, I didn't envision that I'd have bobcat that walked regularly through my yard, but I do. Okay, that's part of country living. There are animals here. There are things that live here, not just people. And we make do and we share the environment. What I'm asking you is, are you going to make any attempt at relocating the wildlife that is living there? There is a known colony of groundhogs that live there. What are you going to do? Are you just going to kill them all?
Well, no, we're not going to kill any wildlife, but I don't want to have a argument over this point. I mean, we're operating in a land use permitting context here that's got to go by what the rules are. that
But the
town
land
set up.
has animals that live on it. What are you going to do for it?
If you want, we will stay in touch with you and find out where this family of woodchucks is and try to do our best to make sure that nothing happens to them. But one thing that we can't do is if this town has land that's zoned for other purposes that protects wildlife better. If we were to propose this project where there are a lot more critters, including wild and endangered species, you'd be laughing at us, okay? These projects have to be properly situated where there's water and sewer and major roadways, and where the comprehensive plan has drawn them up for something worse than what we're proposing. And that's why.
The density
That's
doesn't.
why this is the site that we centered on. We wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't.
If the density were reduced, the impact on the critters would be lessened.
Well, it
Just
may
keep
or
that
may
in
not,
mind.
may or may not. You still have to build roads and stormwater management and get in and out.
It would still be less of an impact. Also, the final thing that I have is the buffering regarding the no cut zone. That's well and good for that back row. What about all around the rest of the property? Because quite honestly, I don't think that we want all of that not having any buffering around the outsides where the main roads are. Like, I mean, I know if I were living there and that were gonna be my house there, I wouldn't want to see all of that. Are we gonna have trees put in there? Are we gonna put in some buffering so they're not looking out the window to, the main road? Like, what is that gonna look like? Is there gonna be any outside buffering on the rest of it other than?
Yes, we've indicated tonight that the landscape plan will be further developed as this project goes forward. We're going to preserve existing trees where possible, and we will get to, it's not done at the concept plan stage, it's done at preliminary and final, where you come up with a landscape plan. We're not going to hide all of the houses so that nobody can see them, but we're hopefully going to get some kind of a balance on the landscape plan that does have some buffering and screening, but nothing like, I can't promise you anything like what happens in the back of this to protect a budding property owner.
No, I understand. It wouldn't be that intense, but you are gonna have some
There'll
basic
be
screening.
something there.
Okay.
There'll be something there that just hasn't been developed
right.
yet.
Okay. Thank you.
If I can just address the wildlife, for one, we don't make any other developer do that. Big River, all the land for Big River is across the street. I know when I built, I had groundhogs, they went somewhere else. We don't make any other developer in town move wildlife, and I do appreciate what you're saying.
No,
but
I'm
we
not
have to we have to be consistent.
Yeah.
And they will move off that property. Fortunate for them, all the way down Hockley Hill Road on the left is all Big River. So there's plenty of room for wildlife in that area. I just want to add one thing. I noticed all the apartments, and I have to address our staff report was excellent, are going to be deemed rentals. So they won't be owned condos, they'll be rentals. Our staff report states that all the duplexes are rentals.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I just want John to confirm. All for sale? Yeah, they're all for sale units.
They're all for sale.
For sale.
Okay, so they're not rentals. I mean, people that buy them can rent
Can
them.
rent them. There's no
They could rent
prohibition
them,
on
but they're
rentals.
not rentals.
Yeah.
Okay, because our staff report says that they are rentals. I wanted to clarify that. So they're all owned condos. People could still rent them, but.
Correct.
Okay. And pedestrian traffic, our engineer, that the town hired is concerned about pedestrian traffic. So we want to try to work in some areas where pedestrian can walk.
Yeah, absolutely. The sidewalks don't show pathways to other logical crossing points, and we need to do better on that. I think that was acknowledged earlier, connecting up the pedestrian walkways. That was a recommendation in the PAR engineering report, that we give people a place to go from the development out to the public street. And hopefully that's lining up with something that's happening on the other side of that street. And that will be part of this plan as it develops. We're well aware of that issue. That was one of the few things that PAR engineering thought could have been better represented on the plan.
Okay, and most of well, I would say all the low to moderate income housing will be integrated
Yes,
throughout the development.
yes, absolutely. No one will
And-
know, looking at it looking at the houses, whether it's a moderate income family or a market rate.
And I think hearing about the density, and we're going in the right direction. I still think that can be, the density can be decreased a little bit on the project. And I'd like to see a low impact business on that commercial pad. I wouldn't want to see, like our traffic engineer said, a Dunkin' Donuts or something like that, that's going to increase traffic going out onto New Stack Hill Road. There is a suicide lane in the middle, but it's called that for a reason. I don't like even using those. But at least you don't have to cross four ways of traffic. I think traffic has been addressed with the soccer field component taken out. It's reduced the traffic concerns, my traffic concerns immensely going on to New Snack Hill Road. That's all I have. Is anybody else? Go ahead, Rick.
Okay, so some of these comments I made at the last meeting, and maybe that precipitated the plan. And before I do that, I just want to follow up on Ron's. I know the 25% have to be integrated. Is it going to be 25% of the single family units and then 25% of the duplexes?
Yes.
They're not all going to be the duplexes, right? They'll be mixed. So there'll be 25% of the single families will be low to mod and 25% of the duplexes. So it's kind of dispersed evenly.
Yes.
So the 2 points that I made at the last meeting, one was the access road that's to the back of the property. And I agree with the residents that should probably not be a vehicular through street to Wisteria Drive, but I would like to see some sort of a shared use path. I realize they might require a thin break in the buffer. And if the fire department requires the crash gate, that's one more thing to tie in. But I think it would give folks an opportunity, whether they walk or ride a bicycle, not to have to go out to either of the major state roads if they just wanted to walk around the neighborhood. And that may, kind of dovetail your pedestrian plan that I guess we'll see coming forward. I don't know if there is any plan to put sidewalks along Hockney Hill Road or New Neck Hill Road.
No.
I recognize that's probably more into RIDOT's purview, so I just want to mention, it certainly would help. But there has to be adequate right of way and some other things that would come into that. When we talk about density, and I realize this is a concept plan, if it gets approved, this is the number of units, and then you still have permitting to do, stormwater, other little details that need to be shown on the plan that may reduce it. But there's also got to be some idea. One of the things I noticed that was missing is like a mail and package drop off. The US mail and some of those delivery systems, at least based on the other developments that we have that are similar to this, have a designated area with like a gazebo, maybe 6 parking spaces, and all of the mailboxes. That's going to be required. That's not shown on the plan. The visitor parking we talked about, and then if you start adding in the pedestrian walkways and the potential areas where we're going to have to deal with stormwater, I'm wondering how much of this density would be further reduced, and I'm reluctant to approve something this dense, knowing that this basically just ends up being a floor, and then maybe some of those other things come in and appear to take up land area, so now we end up with more 2 units, or we end up with more of the 2-story 2 units, or some other way to make up the space. And the biggest point that I made at the last meeting was a type of commercial facility, and I hadn't envisioned it all the way to the right. I had it where, or what my suggestion was, that people entering Coventry, and this is kind of taken from the comprehensive plan, if this is supposed to be the gateway parcel with a mixed-use development, there should be landscaping and some type of feature at the intersection. So that would be what the cars see that are stacked at the light to either go left on Hockney Hill or continue on into town from New Neck Hill Road. And I think my suggestion was to put the commercial building over in that area. Now, there may be an engineering reason why it can't, but it wouldn't then abut the Wood Estates properties. It would abut the houses that are built in this subdivision. And some of those, and again, I think I specifically said no restaurants, nothing with grease, no dumpsters, no, something like a bank or a medical office, because they tend to, first of all, they're quite often closed on Sundays, which provides visitor parking for that Super Bowl game. But they also have landscaping that could be, maybe lend itself. And I think the example I gave is there's a new Chase Bank that went up in Warwick, and that's exactly what they did. They built a nice stone wall, and it says, "Welcome to East Natick," and it's all landscaped. And when you're sitting at the light at Bald Hill Road and you look over, that's what you see. So I don't know what the reasoning was to put the commercial. It may have something to do with where the entrance and exit was going to go. Maybe you needed to distance it from the intersection, but having that cul-de-sac and this housing so close, there's just no room for any aesthetic type view as you approach this parcel from the south heading into Coventry. So those were my comments before. And some of that, if it gets addressed, would also lend itself to perhaps reducing the density. And I realize, prices of building have gone up. I remember the Crompton Meadows, and I don't know how many units are going in there, but these 2-bed, 2-bath dwellings with the garage are selling like hotcakes in South Kingston and in Coventry. The prices are now up. They came in before us and their pro forma for Mr. Lombardo was they were gonna sell for 350,000. They're selling for between 650 and 700,000. Now, I realize that's not all profit because the cost of building and everything else is going up. But I just would like to see maybe recrunch some numbers and see if we can maybe reconfigure this somehow to create the aesthetic view corridor when you come up, and when you take a hard look at your stormwater and a place for packages and some other things, it may lend itself to accomplishing what so many other people have said about reducing the density. I'll leave it at that. Yep.
Anybody else on the board have any questions? I see a few hands and the public comment is still open. Come on up, Mr. Revens.
Chairman and members of the commission, thank you. I'd like to ask you to please consider engaging a landscape architect to peer review the landscaping plan and advise you on it, and that plan be reviewed and approved prior to the development getting master plan approval, because if you don't do it that way, we're in a lot weaker position after. And we're very appreciative of Mr. Kalunian's suggestion to locate the retail at the main intersection. And the kinds of uses he's talking about typically have very nice landscaping that goes with them on the portion of the premises that they would occupy if retail is still going to be a part of it. And it would relieve the pretty significant intrusion into the use and enjoyment of those properties that would have the roadway in their backyard, even with the buffer. And a lot of the buffer is scrub brush. Some of it is nice trees. Some of it is some evergreens mixed in. But if you had a landscaping plan and you filled it in properly with the proper plantings and evergreens and other things, it would be very attractive for both sides of the buffer. And it would be signed and monumented so that it would stay that way and people wouldn't think, well, it's just this scrub stuff. I'm going to go in and cut it and put my vegetable garden over there, or put my shed there, or put my kid's swing set there or something else. We want to be sure that that's protected. So we'd ask you to please consider that as part of this. And while my clients have had conversations with the developer, which I encourage them to do, I think there's been 2 meetings. Other than that, there's been absolutely no communication between the parties. And the only way we get even the plans that get filed is when I email the planner every week or 2 and say, if you got anything new in, can you send me a copy of it? So there was never an effort to sit down between the lawyers or anybody else and try to work out any of these details ahead of time, which is their choice. And they made that choice, but I don't want anybody to think that that ever happened. The only thing that happened was a couple of meetings, and my clients who I identified previously made suggestions, and some of them have worked into this plan, but it's more because of the process as opposed to there was any agreement when they left that they were going to change this or change that or change the other thing. But as a result of the first public hearing and comments that you made, that's really why the plan got tweaked, not because there was any discussions about an agreement about tweaking it. Because if there were, and they had done things that I think are pretty basic that I asked for my clients and I would have been somewhere else tonight if those things were already in the plan. So I appreciate your attention. I appreciate your consideration. I know you don't have an easy job, and I know you have to balance the provisions that are in the statute and the affordable housing requirements. And I know that it's a very low threshold that the applicant has to get over to get this approved. It's not like a regular zoning hearing where they need special use permits and dimensional relief and other things, and it's a higher standard. This is a relatively low standard, but for you and for them and for the community, you still want something at the end of the day that everybody's going to be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to take a couple of more before we will be continuing this to a time specific in a and a date specific. I'll take a couple of more. Come on up, Senator. And I'll get to you next.
Again, Leonidas Reptakis. Just a couple of concerns as listening the last couple hours. Number one, I like in the future that the developer presents their information a lot sooner. I think the 19-page traffic study wasn't brought up to the public till the day of the meeting. The other issue is, I know that Mr. Landry brought up the fact about the 200-unit development down in Hopkinton. I tried looking it up, but hopefully he can share that same concept with the planning board. I looked up on another project down in Hopkinton called Brushy Brook, 140 houses on 375 acres, and Mr. Landry was in that article. The other issue, talking about density, you brought up a very good point. Now, I Googled how many houses are in Wood Estates. Now, I'm not sure, it's from Century 21, that there's 370 houses in Wood Estates. Now, I'm not sure if that includes Wood Estates North, but if we take the 370 houses in Wood Estates and 146 units in this development has 2 egresses and entrances right now, and those 370 houses in Wood Estates have 6, which is Wisteria, Magnolia, Catalpa Way. I believe there's also Wisteria, let's see, Wood Cove, Magnolia, Kylie Way, Clubhouse Road. So there's more egresses for 370 units, even if we raise it up to 500 units versus 146 units here and only 2. The other issue, again, regrettably, I don't agree with Mr. Landry's comments about that this doesn't have a traffic impact. It really does, because when you take the 146 units, that's 40% of the 370 with, again, 2 versus 6. Again, a traffic light, I would recommend that the planning board conveys that message to DOT. A private road going onto a state road, the developer would have to pay for the traffic signal. But if it's a town road going onto a state road, we in the General Assembly always go to the Traffic Commission to get a traffic light installed, being a town road and a state road. But here, again, I would rather see, that's why I would agree that we should have the intersections to this development, the 2 intersections be one already at Route 3, which there is traffic signals. That can be probably turned into a better system. It would benefit everybody on Route 3, on Harkney Hill Road, and even Hill Farm Road, when you have a new entrance, specifically where that traffic signal is right now, and then maybe another traffic signal further up where the exit comes out to Route 3, and then again, Leisure Way is right across the street. But again, the cost is the burden on the developer. I know people hate to make that left turn onto Route 3 coming out of that development. And when you see all that congestion, they would still be coming out onto Harkney Hill Road. I don't think anybody's going to drive through the development and try to exit to that first entrance across Leisure Way. And again, I think a lot of that traffic would be coming out to Harkney Hill Road, which I disagree having any traffic. Again, once again, I'm going to reiterate it, that we do not want any more traffic coming out onto Harkney Hill Road. If we have to, it would be wise to have it come out right at that intersection of Harkney Hill Road and Route 3. So that's my points that I want to make sure that the developer shares that 200 unit development down on Hopkinton. I can't find it on the internet. I found 176 units on 365 acres versus 29 acres. So any information that the developer could share with the planning board that they mentioned these projects down at Hopkinton, I think would help us make a wise decision and balance out the issues for the residents in Wood Estates. And one last point. Years ago, several years ago, I owned for over 40 years our parcel on Route 3. It was abutted by Leisure Way. And back then, when we signed off, on the agreement of Leisure Way, there was supposed to be a 25 to 50-foot buffer. By the time the developer was constructing that development, as he was coming to the end of the development, all of a sudden, we had a bulldozer come right up to our parcel, and it was too late. So I want to make sure that there's an ironclad agreement between the town of Coventry and the planning board and the developer, that if any of this abutment, whether it's 40 feet or 50 feet, is reduced, that there's either a penalty or the project gets completely stopped. So I lived through that, where we were supposed to have a 50-foot buffer back of our parcel on Nooseneck Hill Road versus Leisure Village. And somebody can come and visit it right now. The backyard of those mobile homes abut the property that I used to own. So I want to make sure that when there's agreements being made between the developer and the town of Coventry, that they are 100% agreed and there's no violation of that agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. One more, sir. Name and address, please.
Yes, my name is Paul Ruggieri, 66 Wood Cove Drive, Coventry. I want to thank the board for the time you're putting into this and trying to do the right thing. I do appreciate the movement. First of all, I would like to see no retail or no commercial, because that's taken up, no one counted the 106 traffic spots that they have and the in and out of Route 3. I think if there is a gateway, it ought to be where you have, if you're going to do if you're going to have some sort of commercial project, I think it's better to have it at that intersection where Route 3 and Hockney Hill Road already, not Hockney Hill, Route 118 meet, and I think having the gateway there with something that looks nice is very important. So I appreciate your thoughts on that and changing where they're putting, if they're going to do a retail spot, it shouldn't be down the end closer to Magnolia Lane. We don't need more traffic going into Wood Estates. There's already a lot that goes in there now on Magnolia Lane. And trying to get out onto Route 3 can be a real challenge already, even though there's a light a little bit beyond the Cumberland Farm. The traffic comes speeding by on Route 3 all the time. And even having that middle lane, it can be treacherous. So I hope they take all that into consideration before any final decisions are made. Again, my first choice would be no commercial, no retail. And another factor is the people that move into these low and middle income properties, are they going to be able to afford snow removal and waste removal? Because a lot of them are not going to be making enough money. And there's a lot of inflation going up right now, and it's having an impact on everybody. So I think even it's dangerous to even build something right now. The economy, and then even at a federal level, is collapsing. And we're still going through some difficult times with this so-called pandemic or pandemic, whatever you want to call it. But we're not the republic that we should be as a country, and it impacts everybody from the top down. And so people have to maybe delay some of the decisions they're making now until you gather more information and things are, as Senator Ratapta said, we got to have an ironclad plan and people have to stick to it. So, thank you.
Thank you. I'll take one from Zoom if anybody is on Zoom. Anybody have their hands up on Zoom? Okay. Does anybody else have any questions, or we'll continue it? Okay. I'll entertain a motion to continue public hearing and the meeting to the August 23rd date.
I'll make a motion that we continue public hearing to the August 23rd date.
I have a motion. I have a second.
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Reyes. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Doug, you want to say a few things?
Thank you. Can everybody hear me all right? Doug McLean, Town Planner. A few announcements on how you can stay engaged with the project and resources that are available on the town website for you to be aware of. As was just indicated, the next date for this project will be August 23rd. That's 2 weeks from tonight at 6:30. That date is firm. We need to verify the best location for that meeting to accommodate the group size, climate control, audio visual goals. So please check the town website 1 week before that meeting date to confirm the location. We are going to make that meeting date very clear right up front on the town website. And you can also find that, or we're going to make that meeting location very clear on the town website. And you'll be able to use the town's calendar through picking the particular date, August 23rd, and you'll see more details there. I'd like to make everybody here aware, clearly there's a lot of interest in the project, and the folks in the room here are certainly dedication and the core group of interested residents. There are several features on our website that we're going to offer to learn about the project on an ongoing basis. The revised site plan that you've been looking up on the screen tonight, the revised traffic study, the peer review traffic study will all remain on the town's website if you follow the link for tonight's meeting on the calendar. And when you get to the agenda, look for the link that's called Agenda Packet. Now that same link, Agenda Packet, we're going to use to provide revised materials. We do anticipate revised application materials in advance of that August 23rd meeting. When you go to the August 23rd meeting, follow that through the calendar on the town website, look for the link for Agenda Packet. I anticipate that we will upload the fiscal impact study that has been referenced. That's a document that was submitted with the original application, but since the discussion and study of interest of that, I think we'll make that available for review. We'll provide any of the revised applicant materials, any other relevant materials on the project. So keep tracking that. The town's calendar also offers videos. If anyone wants to review, any discussion they heard here tonight, you can come to this meeting and you'll see an opportunity to see a video. When this was heard originally in July 10th, you'll see an opportunity to see a video of that discussion as well. I will remind everybody that all of our meetings are available through Zoom. So if there's a meeting you can't attend, you are more than welcome to provide your view it through Zoom. Anytime we make a call for public comment, there will be an opportunity for those on Zoom to raise their hand and make public comment on Zoom as well. And as a final announcement, there is a state mandated clock on this project. I had a very brief discussion with the applicant this evening, and they have indicated that they will extend the time frame on the state required clock on this project to September 29th. That would allow for additional meetings to take place. And I'll ask for them when they're ready to make a statement to concur with that September 29th would be the date that they're extending the state required clock on this project to allow for additional meetings and consideration before a decision needs to be rendered. And again, anyone can email me any of their comments in between meetings. You'll find my email address, Doug McLean. You'll find that on the town's planning department webpage. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doug. Anything on director's report tonight?
Nothing tonight.
You kind of covered it just now.
I tried.
Any public comment other than this project? Any on Zoom? Put your hands up. Okay, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion by Mr. Clooney. I have a second
Before
by
you
Mr.
adjourn, just
Reyes.
one quick comment before you vote. I think we just wanted on the record the applicant to attest to their extension of time.
Okay,
Yes, we do so agree and consent to the extension.
okay, thank you. So you've extended to the extension. Thank you. Okay, I have a motion. I have a second. All those in favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.